This is a 1957 Fordson Major diesel tractor. Fordson made these from, I think, 1953 to 1957, at which point they were replaced with I think the Power Major. Either the Power Major or the Super Major. Now before 1953, there was another Fordson tractor called the Fordson Major, and it was similar, but it had like a different engine, I think a different transmission, totally different body styling, and the most unmistakable difference is that the clutch and brake are flip-flopped either side. So the older ones have the clutch on the right side and the brake on the left, rather than the more traditional clutch on the left, brake on the right, like we normally use. So because this is a newer one, this is an E1A Major, as opposed to the older ones, which were known as E27N Majors. I think that was some kind of internal code that Fordson used in manufacturing, but that's what they're kind of known as now. These are also sometimes called new Majors, and apparently the old ones are called high Majors because you sit up higher on the operator station. So the new Major was available with 3 different engines: a gasoline, a diesel, which is what this one is, and one to burn something called tractor vaporizing oil, which from what I gather is basically just kerosene. The diesel versions of the tractor have a 3.6 liter 4-cylinder direct injected naturally aspirated engine designed and produced by Fordson that produces about 40 horsepower, give or take. And don't quote me, but I think these have wet sleeves, so that's pretty cool because that makes them much easier to rebuild if you ever need to. There is, at least on this one, there's a serial number plate right here. And there's also, I think this is a serial number for the engine. I think you can date it with that as well. One of the most important things to know about these is that the injection pump does not share lubrication with the engine. It is lubricated by engine oil, but it's totally separate. You have to change it separately from the engine. And it's pretty confusing because it has this little line right here that looks like it goes right into the engine, but it doesn't. It actually just curls around and kind of sticks out down there where you can't really see it, and that's just like a breather. So it's really common for people to not know that and just run it and run it and run it until there's no oil left in the injection pump because it evaporates or whatever, and the bearings in the injection pump to fail. I think you can still rebuild them. Like, that's not a catastrophic thing. It'll just, obviously it won't run until you fix it, but it's easy enough to avoid as long as you keep oil in the injection pump. And in fact, when I bought this tractor, it wouldn't start, and I came to find out that that was because the injection pump was completely out of oil and the fuel rack was stuck in the shutdown position, so it wasn't getting any fuel. But anyway, that's about all I know about these tractors in general, but there is a huge amount of information available on them just with a simple search. They were really popular in Britain and in America, and I mean, parts and information are readily available. So what I'm trying to do now is hook the starter back up to see if I can get it to work. It's got this cool like manually activated starter. If you move this lever, it pushes this rod and actually pushes the starter gear into the ring gear there. And it's got this little switch on it, I guess to trigger the starter solenoid. But what I'm going to do, I went and got a solenoid, and it had this push button switch in the instrument panel there that still works. So I'm just going to run a wire from the battery through the switch to the solenoid, and not use the one on the starter because that seems a little bit dangerous. It'd be really easy to bump this lever while you're climbing on it and start the thing up and just run yourself over. So it'd be better to have this lever and a switch, so you need both hands, I think. Alright, I got that cobbled up. I just ran a wire from the positive battery terminal down under here into this switch on the dash, and then back out to the solenoid right here, and then of course the positive battery cable just straight through the solenoid into the starter. So let's see if the starter will spin over. So let's see. Did something. I couldn't get the starter to do anything on the tractor, so I took it off and I'm just going to start disassembling it, see if I can see if there's anything wrong with it. So I think the problem is that these little curly clock springs hold the brushes down in contact with the armature, and these two are fine, but this one was broken. I took it off. It was broken in two pieces, and then this one has lost all its spring. So I got some new springs. I'm going to replace those. I was going to replace the brushes, but I can't figure out how to get them off of there. They're like, the wires are kind of crimped into this thick piece of, I think it's brass, maybe it's steel, I don't know, but then that's riveted to this plate, so that was kind of a pain to replace. So I'm just going to put these springs on it and it should be okay, I think. This armature is all marked up where I guess the brushes have been arcing on it, so I'm just going to give it a quick spin with some sandpaper here. I'll call that good. I should have showed this before I put it back on there because I don't think you can really see it now, but apparently this is a Lucas M45G starter. So when I first was trying it, the lift was really weak for some reason. It would only lift itself if you revved the engine up, and if you put any weight on it, it would just sink back down, as you saw. And I thought there was something wrong with it until I tried closing this ball valve on this remote setup here. So this is I guess this is an open center control valve right here. And I guess that was just letting all the fluid bypass that normally would be for the rear lift. And that must be why whoever installed it put this ball valve here, so you can close that and make the lift work, which is kind of... I feel like that's not the way it's supposed to work, but the rear lift does work, so that's good. Hopefully you can see that this wheel wobbles in and out pretty significantly while it's turning. And I think the only thing that can cause that is a bent axle shaft. Maybe a bent rim, I'm not sure, but the rim doesn't look bent, so I'm going to take the wheel off and inspect the axle shaft a little bit closer. Surprisingly straight from up there on the seat. I put a dial indicator on it, and I've got a socket on the brake drum here, which is connected directly to the axle shaft. So let's spin it around and see if it's bent. Yeah, no, that looks good. So that would leave a bent rim. ahead and swapped those wheels from side to side, mostly just because I thought it looked better. I thought it looked really goofy with the back wheels sticking way out from the fronts, but also because I wanted to make sure that it was a bent rim, and now this wheel, or I should say this side, wobbles, so that was definitely it. But I hooked a bush hog up to it, so let's go out in this field and see if we can do some mowing. As far as controls go, you have clutch pedal here, left and right brakes here, your PTO, backwards is engaged, forwards disengaged, the starter pinion engagement lever, down is engaged, up is disengaged, the throttle, down is full throttle, up is idle, the high-low selector lever, down is low, up is high. The gear shift, you have 1, 2, 3, and reverse. On the right hand side below the seat, you have the draft control. But that pretty much wraps this up. I mean, there's a lot more you could do to this thing. Fix the leaks, put some gauges on it, place the seat, replumb the remote setup correctly. I just don't really have any use for it, so I just wanted to get it running and driving and operating decently, and I intend to sell it. But thanks for watching.